Well, yesterday you got quite a bit of practice writing the formulas for compounds that are produced by ionic bonding between elements, and today we're going to learn how to name those compounds. So up here, the first five compounds that I have on the board are compounds that we actually did in yesterday's video, and we figured out what the formulas should be. Now we're going to learn how to name them. One thing that I didn't mention yesterday is that when you write the formulas for these compounds, you should always put the metal first. So whatever's on the left-hand side of the periodic table, to the left of the stair-step line, that should be the first element that you write. So the metal goes first and the non-metal goes second. All right, so when I name these are actually pretty simple to name. The first element here is sodium. So the first word in the name is just sodium. The second element is chlorine, but when I name a compound, I'm going to take the suffix that's on the end of that, and instead of making it an INE, I'm going to make it an IDE. So whatever element that I'm using, it has to end now in an IDE. So this is going to be, instead of, it was chlorine, but now instead of chlorine, I'm going to change it so it's chloride, sodium chloride. Okay, so everything here, first element's name, second element, you're going to use the root, but then you're going to put an IDE on the end instead of what ending is already on it. So let's look at this one. First element again is sodium, so I'll write sodium. And O is what element? Well, that's oxygen. But again, I want to change it so that it ends in an IDE. So I don't call it sodium oxygen, I call it sodium oxide. Okay, sodium oxide. Instead of sodium oxygen, it's sodium oxide. What about this one? Well, the first element just gets named the way it is. So Ca stands for calcium. And same thing here, oxygen is going to become oxide with an IDE on the end. Okay, and I understand that you may not know all of these particular names for some of these, and the names are written on your periodic table. So you are always allowed to use a periodic table for your homework, for your test. You're always allowed to have that table in front of you. Okay, how about this one? Calcium. So we used that one before. So there's calcium. And what is this element? Well, F is fluorine, but when it's the second element in the compound, instead of calling it fluorine, I'm going to call it fluoride with an IDE ending. Now, when you write fluoride, you need to be careful because it's spelled F-L-U-O-R, not O-U. I see an awful lot of calcium fluorides. Flour is what you use to make cookies with. We're not making cookies today, so I know that's disappointing. I wanted cookies too. But anyway, calcium fluoride is F-L-U-O, so make sure you put the U in front of the O whenever you write fluoride. All right, one more. What would I call this one? First element is magnesium. Magnesium, and then what is this? It's phosphorus, but because it needs to end in an IDE instead of phosphorus, I'm going to call it phosphide. Phosphide, magnesium phosphide, okay? Now let's try to do it the other way around. Now let's take some names and let's write the formula out of it. So if I have potassium nitride, what is that going to look like? Well, potassium is a K, and nitride, what do you think that comes from? Nitride comes from nitrogen, which is an N. So are we done? No, we are most certainly not done, because we have to think about how many electrons they're going to be transferring to each other. What charge does potassium normally have? Well, it's in the first column on the periodic table, so it normally has a +1. I'm just going to put a little plus up there so that I can remember that. I have a nitrogen. Nitrogen is normally what charge? Well, again, it wants to gain 3 electrons, so your nitrogen's normally going to be a -3. And so in order to balance those out, I'm going to bring this 3 down here and this 1 down here. I don't actually write the 1, but if there's nothing written there, I know that there is a 1. So this 3 comes down here, and it becomes K3N. And then you don't want to leave the charges up there because we now have a compound. Okay, so it's K3N for potassium nitride. How about barium oxide? Okay, barium is Ba. Oxide comes from oxygen, which is an O. What's the normal charge on barium? Well, barium's in this column. Barium is normally a +2. Oxygen is normally what charge? Yeah, it's normally a -2. Now, you could say put 2's down there, but we want them in the lowest possible ratio. It's kind of like fractions. You know, your teachers always tell you make sure that you reduce your fractions. So I don't want a Ba2O2. I want just 1 of each because the barium has 2 electrons to give. The the oxygen wants 2 electrons, so I just need 1 atom of each to make that. So barium oxide. Finally, aluminum chloride. So aluminum is an Al, chloride is a Cl. What do I need here? So the aluminum is normally what? Metal over here. So that aluminum is normally a +3 charge. What's chlorine normally? Yeah, chlorine's here. Chlorine's normally a -1. So what do I have to do in order so that I have the right number of electrons to transfer? Well, if I have 3 of these, I'm going to need 3 chlorines. So it's going to be AlCl3, okay? Aluminum chloride. So the same worksheet that you guys started yesterday, yesterday you just wrote the formula in the second column. Today you're going to name those, and then I gave you some names and you're going to write the formulas for them.